Every spring, you do the same thing. You walk into the garden center, you look at the seed packets, you pick something. Summer comes, the flowers open, fall arrives, everything dies. And the following spring, you start over from nothing. That cycle feels normal because the entire gardening industry has been built around it. But on Amish farms across Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Indiana, that cycle has not existed for 200 years. The plants established in 1820 were still there in 1850, still there in 1900, still there today. They do not buy seeds because they do not have to. They built the system once, and the system has been sustaining itself ever since. The seed industry's single greatest commercial achievement is convincing you that annual purchasing is simply how gardening works. It is not. It is how one particular kind of gardening works. The kind that requires you to come back to the store every March. Every spring, the garden center betting on your return is not a conspiracy. It is simply the logical outcome of a seed industry that discovered something very profitable. Annual plants sell annually. Perennials sell once. Self-seeding varieties sell once and then disappear from your shopping list forever. The commercial selection pressure that has shaped what fills those seed racks over the past century has been almost perfectly calibrated against the plants the Amish relied on most heavily. Not because anyone sat in a room and decided to suppress them, because the economics of seed retail naturally favor plants that cannot sustain themselves. A plant that returns every year without being purchased again is, from the seed industry's perspective, a product that failed to generate repeat revenue. From the Amish farmer's perspective, it is the only product worth planting. Here is where the specific mechanism of the Amish planting system diverges most sharply from anything taught in contemporary gardening. The Amish did not simply choose perennials over annuals. That distinction alone does not explain 200 years of zero seed purchasing. What they built was a layered propagation architecture, a system in which every plant in every zone of the farm was selected not only for what it produced, but for how it reproduced. And the reproduction method was the criterion that mattered most. Three categories of plant filled the Amish farm. The first category was deep-rooted perennials that returned from the same root crown every spring without any intervention. Plants like wild bergamot, purple coneflower, and native goldenrod, whose root systems survived decades of winter and re-emerged reliably each April. The second category was self-seeding annuals and biennials. Plants like black-eyed Susan and wild phacelia that completed their cycle each year but dropped viable seed into the surrounding soil, so reliably that they appeared to return like perennials from the observer's perspective. The third category was vegetatively spreading plants. Clover, creeping thyme, native mints, that expanded outward from a central planting through runners and root division, colonizing new ground each season without producing seed at all. A farm built across all three categories had no biological gap that required a seed purchase to fill. The placement of these plants across the farm was not decorative and it was not random. This is the part of the Amish system that contemporary gardening literature has most completely failed to recover, because it requires thinking about a farm not as a collection of beds and borders, but as a set of ecological zones, each with its own soil conditions, moisture levels, light exposure, and disturbance patterns. The Amish matched plant propagation strategy to zone ecology with a precision that had nothing to do with aesthetics and everything to do with which plants would survive, spread, and sustain themselves in each specific location without requiring any ongoing management. Fence rows were planted with self-seeding species that benefited from the disturbed soil along the fence base, soil that was regularly turned by frost heave and animal movement, creating the exact seedbed conditions those plants needed to germinate reliably each spring. Field edges received deep-rooted perennials whose root systems could compete with adjacent crop roots and survive the occasional mechanical disturbance of field edge cultivation. Pasture zones received vegetatively spreading plants that could withstand grazing pressure and actually spread more aggressively under the hoof traffic that would have killed an annual planting outright. Every zone had a plant matched to its ecology. Every plant was matched to the zone where its specific propagation strategy would be most effective. The system required understanding, not labor. And once established, it required almost none of either. There is a specific moment in the Amish planting calendar that has no equivalent in contemporary gardening practice, and it may be the single most important act in the entire system. It happens in late summer between August and early October, depending on the region, when the gardening industry is telling you that the season is ending and it is time to clean up. The Amish called this period the seed harvest. Not a harvest of food, a harvest of next year. Every self-seeding plant on the farm was observed during this window, not for what it was producing above ground in the current season, but for the viability and distribution of its seed heads. Plants with the most vigorous seed production were left completely undisturbed. Their seed heads allowed to remain on the stem until they opened naturally and dropped onto the surrounding soil. In some cases, a farmer would gently shake a mature seed head over a bare patch of disturbed ground where establishment was desired, not planting in the formal sense, simply extending the natural distribution range of a seed drop that would have happened anyway. The key act was restraint. The critical decision was what not to do, not cutting back, not tidying, not clearing the dried stems that contemporary garden advice describes as unsightly. Those dried stems were next year's seed bank standing upright, waiting for winter weathering to open them and spring moisture to germinate them. Every autumn cleanup that removes them is a seed purchase that will be required the following March. What contemporary seed catalogs describe as plant failures? The plant that did not come back, the variety that did not perform as expected, the seeds that did not germinate reliably, are in most cases not failures of the plants. They are failures of the selection criteria used to choose them. The Amish applied a selection filter that the seed industry has never adopted because it produces no commercial outcome. They called it the 10-year test, not formally, not with that name, but as a practical standard applied across generations of farm observation. A plant that was still on the farm 10 years after its initial establishment and had spread rather than contracted in that time was a keeper. A plant that required replanting within 2 seasons was discarded regardless of how it performed during those 2 seasons. This filter eliminated the entire category of visually spectacular short-lived plants that fill contemporary seed racks. It also eliminated any plant that required particular soil amendments, consistent irrigation, or protection from normal seasonal weather. What remained after the 10-year filter was applied was a plant list of extraordinary resilience. Species that had demonstrated the ability to sustain themselves through drought years, late frosts, wet springs, and hard winters without any assistance. These were not the showiest plants in the catalog. They were the ones that were still there a decade later. The question most people ask when they first encounter this system is where to begin. The answer the Amish history provides is both simple and counterintuitive. Begin with the plants that are already there. Before purchasing anything, before planting anything, walk the perimeter of your property and identify every plant that has survived multiple winters without any assistance from you. These are your 10-year plants. They have already passed the filter. They are already telling you which species can sustain themselves in your specific soil, your specific climate, your specific disturbance patterns. Divide them. Extend them into new zones. Collect seed from them in late summer and distribute it into the locations where you want new establishment. This costs nothing, and it begins the system with the most resilient genetic material available to your specific site. The plants that have already proven themselves there. The Amish did not begin their systems by purchasing the best available varieties from a supplier. They began by observing what was already surviving without help and building outward from that foundation. Every farm had a different starting point. Every farm ended up with a plant palette precisely calibrated to its own ecological conditions because the selection filter was applied on-site, over time, by the plants themselves. The catalog never had access to that information. The plants did. The seed you save from your own established plants is not the same seed sold in a catalog packet. And this distinction matters more than most gardeners have been told. A seed packet produced commercially contains genetic material selected for visual uniformity, predictable germination timing, and single-season performance under controlled nursery conditions. The seed you collect from a plant that has survived 3 winters on your specific property contains something the catalog cannot sell you: site adaptation. Every generation of a self-seeding plant that completes its cycle on your land and germinates the following spring is a generation that has been filtered by your exact frost dates, your exact soil drainage, your exact rainfall patterns. After 5 generations, 5 seasons of the plant selecting its own survivors, the resulting population is measurably better calibrated to your specific conditions than any commercially produced seed of the same species could ever be. The Amish understood this not as genetics, which they had no language for, but as observation. The plants that came back strongest were the ones whose seed you saved most carefully. The ones whose seed you saved most carefully were the ones that came back strongest. The loop between observation and selection was the invisible breeding program that ran on every Amish farm for 2 centuries without anyone calling it that. The bees have not changed. The plants have not changed. The soil that rewards patience over purchasing has not changed. What changes when this system is understood and applied is the question asked at the beginning of each season. Not what should I buy this year, not which catalog has the best pollinator mix this spring, but what is already here, what has already survived without my help, and what does the farm tell me it wants to become if I stop interrupting it? That question, applied honestly across a decade, produces something the seed industry cannot manufacture and cannot sell. A farm whose value compounds every year without any external input, whose plant palette is more precisely calibrated to its location than any commercial variety could ever be, and whose forage calendar requires no annual transaction to remain intact. The Amish did not achieve this through discipline or ideology. They achieved it through economics. They could not afford to reset the system every spring, so they built a system that did not need resetting. The constraint produced the solution, and the solution 200 years later still works on any piece of land where a farmer is willing to ask what is already here before reaching for the catalog. Leave a comment below. Is there a plant on your property right now that has come back without any help from you for 3 or more years? That plant is already passing the 10-year test. That plant is the beginning of this system. If this breakdown gave you a clearer picture of what 2 centuries of zero purchase planting actually looks like at the biological level, subscribe. There is more thinking like this where it came from.